Alright guys, TacticalRab back again today. Hope you're all doing well and enjoying your day so far. Welcome back to Formula 1 news and a concerning time at the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix right now with explosions going off just 6 miles from the track. Questions have been raised whether the weekend shall continue. The FIA say for now it will go ahead, but all could potentially change. Very much intrigued to your thoughts in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always, I would greatly appreciate it. Really up to the channel, let's just dive straight into things. So firstly, of course, the press conferences were going on. Practice 1 and Practice 2 are on today. We'll talk about kind of the results and the pecking order after those here in a few minutes time. Many other things happening though, like this also in the press conference, where Verstappen kind of joking about Ferrari. I think we could all agree Ferrari is the slowest car. Red Bull is the most reliable. Again, some right towards the end of the day, potential engine reliability issues for the Red Bull powertrains. Not on the Red Bulls this time, on the Alfa Tauris. We'll talk about that here in a second. Just this also from the Red Bull side. Yesterday we discussed, or a couple of days ago, what exactly went wrong with the Red Bulls at Bahrain. They believe both cars suffered a lack of fuel pressure, correct amount of fuel in both cars, but a vacuum prevented the pumps from drawing fuel. We've taken the necessary steps to correct this issue and we expect no problems this weekend. So Red Bull say it's going to be all okay. Obviously there'll be some nervous faces I'm sure towards the end of the race anyway in the Red Bull camp, but I mean still they reckon it's going to be all fine for this weekend, which of course is good for the Red Bull guys. Not good at all though from the Aston Martin camp. Sebastian Vettel I believe suffering pretty bad with it, obviously COVID right now under the weather, so well hopefully he can be back in business for the Australian Grand Prix as they expect him to be, but he's not going to be competing this weekend. So again, Nico Hülkenberg is back in business in the Aston Martin. That's the thing, like it was honestly kind of sad the first weekend in Bahrain that Seb couldn't compete, but then we see this weekend like how bad the Aston Martin was last weekend. Don't really blame him, right, for wanting to take another week off, to be honest. This is funny as well from the Hulk. Life as a super sub, another weekend, another drive. Breaking, Nico Hülkenberg replaces Emo Fittipaldi Jr. for the 2054 Moon Grand Prix, and here he is. So who knows how long this will last, but yeah, for now, hopefully Seb's back in business for Australia in a couple of weeks' time. I'm sure he will be, but I mean, yeah, obviously I hope he feels better, right, and gets over this type of stuff. Now, of course, going into this weekend, there's always talk about the fact that there's a Saudi Arabian Grand Prix, given the fact that some of the best tracks, some of the like classic tracks in F1 are potentially on the chopping block, but the oil money's coming through from the Middle East, and therefore like F1 tends to be over there, right? And as Lewis Hamilton says going into the weekend, we don't decide where we go. I think we're duty bound to try and do what we can. Not necessarily our responsibility that we're brought here, but we try and do what we can. I think it's important that we just try and educate ourselves. Mind-blowing hearing the stories, right? Because there was some like talk about these executions that were going on, like public executions and stuff, like a 14-year-old on death row, you don't know what you're even doing in life. So definitely plenty of frustrations the fact that we're even racing in Saudi Arabia coming into this weekend, and well, understandable, especially given what happened during FP1. So well, as Bottas even says, as drivers, we just have to go where F1 take us and we have to trust them, just hope we can have a positive impact. But this was what was happening. So about 6 miles away from the track, Houthi rebels have attacked an Aramco petroleum facility in Jeddah, right, as I was saying, right next to the track. Now, like, I'm not going to pretend to be an expert on the whole geopolitics of the region, why this conflict is going on, but like, all you can see is the pictures that you can see in front of you. This only a few miles away, and I mean, yeah, loud explosion being heard. Unsure whether it's a missile or like a bomb or whatever the case might be, but clearly they've chosen this weekend to make some sort of statement. Of course, whether that's related to the fact the Grand Prix is going on at the moment, I guess that remains to be seen. This is a remarkable shot actually in the background here of the kind of plume of smoke with the Mercedes in the foreground. Just very quickly to actually mention the Mercedes itself seems like, to some degree, maybe a slightly lower ride height than what they were trying last weekend in Bahrain, so maybe they feel like they can get on top of the porpoising to some degree. But I mean, yeah, as you can see, obviously the real story here is in the background of the image. There was this one as well from the scientists on board where you can see the kind of plume of smoke in the background. So all of a sudden, like a lot of the discussion was not just on the pecking order here on the left-hand side, but more about what was going on off the track. And this actually, that kind of Google Images, perspective on Jeddah, the Corniche circuit right here on the waterline, and then just 46 minutes drive away, but really 7 miles-ish as the crow flies, where this kind of explosion went off. So already a lot of concern, and understandably so. Even air traffic in the region was halted, like as a result of all this stuff and stuff. So crazy stuff happening. And then the questions were being raised: what are they going to do about this? Is the race going to go ahead? Like, what is the statement going to be from F1 on this issue? Now, all drivers and team bosses were called in, as Chris Midler says, unclear why at this point, but I'm sure we could all guess, to be honest. And as he says, hearing some drivers unsure about continuing with the weekends after the recent attack. Now, I mean, the start of FP2 actually gets delayed by 15 minutes as a result. So yes, questions definitely in the air right now. The going statement is, for now, everything's fine, or not necessarily everything's fine, but like the weekend is going to go ahead as planned. They see no issue. But of course, you've got to realize at the same time that Aramco, right, the plant that was attacked, is obviously a major sponsor of F1, right, in this region. That's kind of the point of going to Saudi Arabia, in a sense that the money comes through. It is what it is. But not only do they sponsor the race, there's Aramco signs all over the track in Saudi Arabia, but also at other tracks as well. But also Aston Martin are just straight up sponsored by them. So it doesn't create the greatest dangerous environments if that's where these attacks are being targeted, and they're also associated very much with the F1. So I can understand the cautionary from the drivers and from the teams on this issue, and clearly the FA have gone into it, kind of explain them that it's actually all going to be okay. At least that is the going line. As Chris Millard also points out, in local time at 2200 hours, just an hour after FP2 ends, so not too long after this video goes live, there's going to be a further update on the security surrounding the race and this type of stuff. So hopefully it can all go ahead and it's not going to be a problem, but it just does, make you think about why are we racing in these countries, to be perfectly honest. Obviously the bottom dollar is a very good reason, but it's not exactly the greatest look for F1 in general right now. So while the official line is from Saudi Motorsport Company, the race weekend schedule will continue as planned. The race organisers will remain in direct contact with all the Saudi security authorities to ensure all necessary security and safety measures continue to be implemented. That's what they say. Stefano says we feel safe from the F1 sides. Of course, he is going to say that, I suppose, but he's not going to say the opposite, right? That definitely wouldn't create the greatest impression, to be honest. And it also says they've been working in close contact with the relevant authorities following the situation. The authorities have confirmed the event can continue as planned, and we will remain in close contact with them and all this type of stuff. So for now, I guess it's fine, but things could definitely change over the coming days, depending on what happens overnight, tomorrow, of course, at the race on Sunday. Hopefully everything goes as planned and nothing goes wrong. But, of course, with something happening so locally, you've got to wonder whether this will prove to be a good decision as time progresses. Let's talk about the actual, not really racing, but the actual practice sessions that went on the day. So we had FP1, FP2. FP1 was not ideal at all for Kevin Magnussen in the Haas. He, of course, had a phenomenal P5 last weekend of the Bahrain Grand Prix. Today, pretty much a disaster. Straight away, pretty much his car had to come straight back into the pits. He got out again in the second session, but it fell apart again. So poor day for Haas on the whole. I'm pretty sure Schumacher got a fair few laps in, but wasn't ideal for Magnussen at all. Both of his sessions pretty much ruined by some issues. This also happened was kind of funny, to be honest. This basically one of these signs on the left-hand side here kind of was coming loose, and then Norris just clattered into it at the end of the pit straight, and it completely destroyed it. The red flag came out, I think, 18 minutes into the session, which, of course, no surprise, there's going to be red flags, yellow flags, this type of stuff on a street circuit like Jeddah, with the incredible fast pace that these cars are going around these corners. There was many moments, to be honest, where drivers saved almost certain spins, it seems, but they managed to save it. So, definitely some impressive driving on display, but a very unforgiving circuit, no doubt. This was the classification after FP1. Now, it doesn't really tell the entire story here, because Verstappen, I believe, was actually on the hard tyres for this lap, which does set a very impressive precedent that he was only a tenth of Leclerc with the hard tyres on all the other drivers, I believe, on the softs for these laps. It seemed like Mercedes were way off the pace, but FP2 maybe gave something slightly more representative. This also was noticed that the downforce, like we could see, even we talked about it, I believe, yesterday, that this rear wing that Lewis was running was actually basically had just been trimmed off, right? And now they're running a much lower one, so they believe that they can get away with a much lower downforce level. Of course, look, who knows how this is going to play out in the race, in qualifying, but it seemed like in the race, at least, the Mercedes was somewhat closer to the Red Bulls and the Ferraris on the soft tyres in that kind of one lap type of situation, at least early on the tyre lifespan, than they can get away with in the longer runs on the other compound tyres. And I think we saw that again really in FP2, that Mercedes ended this session only about 5/10 off where Leclerc was and where Verstappen was pretty much, but when they were doing the long runs at the end, Verstappen was like pretty much a second quicker per lap, if not more, than Hamilton on the same compound on the medium. So that does raise an interesting question there, but it also has to say once again, like Kevin's car basically stopped again, had to pull over at turn 14, yellow flags come out, not the greatest day for them at all. Also for Yuki Tsunoda, we'll talk about at the end, but also for the red cars in Ferrari, because this happened, as Sky Sports point out, basically Leclerc just classes into the wall. Big mistake from him, to be honest, because of course, like, some mistakes can be induced by other causes, right, mechanical failures, but a self-induced issue like this in practice is not ideal for him. So I'm pretty sure it kind of, he classes into this wall. It doesn't like make him spin or anything, but it does damage part of the car. The steering arm joint was bent, as Albert points out. So, and also Sainz, I believe, had some other incidents as well. So within basically a lap of each other, within a minute of each other, both cars, both Ferraris, had a bit of a tough time. Not any major damage or anything that can't be fixed, but it does just mean that there's a little bit less practice for these guys. Didn't get to do the long runs at the end, so they don't have quite the data that the other teams have. So just for a few reasons, not the greatest finish to the session for Ferrari by any means. Of course, Leclerc looking to kind of defend his championship or defend his title from last weekend in Bahrain. But a good day on the whole for the Ferraris, at least in terms of pace, but it still seems like they're kind of leading the way. But the Red Bulls, last year, Verstappen was absolutely rapid around this track, especially in qualifying, of course. And then the Mercedes won the race in the end with all the crazy amount of incidents that last year's race had here. But Verstappen was unreal in quali last year. You guys remember that lap? He almost put together, apart from the very final corner when he just overcooked a little bit, that would have certainly been pole if he didn't crash out right towards the end. But this is how the session finishes. So Leclerc on top with a 130 dead pretty much. Verstappen a tenth behind, but that's on the mediums. As is Sainz actually right behind him. It seemed like in general, just when they did go onto the softs, like there didn't seem to be that much more pace in the softs than the mediums, to be honest. But and actually, I'm pretty sure they did put on the softs here, but then the kind of the yellow flags or whatever came out, and they couldn't actually complete their lap. So that's kind of why they didn't get a proper lap in. But Perez also not far off his teammate. It's also pretty impressive from him. Sainz kind of splitting them again. So very similar top six to what we saw last time out. Hamilton and Russell, as we see, like only 4-5 tenths down, which isn't too bad really for where Mercedes maybe thought they would be. But as I say, in kind of long run pace towards the end of the session, didn't look all that promising. Now, definitely worthy of mention, Lando Norris up here in 7th, only 6 tenths off what Ferrari were doing. And last week it was like, what, 2-3 seconds in Bahrain? So hopefully McLaren have figured something out to actually look a lot better this weekend and start being more competitive. Because if they can, that's a very promising sign. Like, they looked nowhere near this competent around a single lap last weekend in Bahrain. Hopefully they can figure it out this time. Ocon, Bottas, Tsunoda completing the top 10. Tsunoda's actually, I didn't actually mention it already, but Tsunoda's car blew up at the end of the race. I don't know what exactly happened. It just went kaput effectively. It just turned off. I think the engine was still running. I'm not exactly sure what the issue was there. But, I mean, yeah, still pretty much the last lap, the last couple of minutes. Another, well, issue potentially arising for Red Bull powertrains, right, already so far this season. So, not the easiest start for them. And these are the bottom 10. Magnussen didn't get all that many laps in, and these guys can see the rest. But very much intrigued to your thoughts on all this stuff in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new as always. Take care of yourselves, and I will see you next time.